Pick Out Fantasy Football Podcast here on the Better Sports Network and Fantasy Alarm social channels. I am John Impemba with Andrew Cooper, and we, for the next hour, are going to be talking some best ball, fantasy football, ADP tiers, breaking down the wide receiver position. Best ball season in full swing. We're doing a bunch of best ball things over at Fantasy Alarm. We got that nice new Discord set up, running daily best ball drafts with the family. You can see our promo code for Underdog Fantasy right here on the screen. No better time right now than to get involved here, Koopa.
No better time at all, especially because we have best ball drafts going right now with Fantasy Alarm members, where you get to draft with me, John Impemba, Howard Bender, Jim Bowden already promised he would do one with us. We're getting all the stars out, getting all the gang out. The first one's underway, and I showed you my roster, John. I'm already almost certainly going to win that one. But there are some other ones where you guys can get in, throw your hat in the ring, maybe get yourself a fancy badge on our Discord. So make sure you're signed up for Underdog. Use promo code Fantasy Alarm. They'll match up to $100. Then go over to our Discord, join that best ball channel. That's how you get in. This is the perfect time for us to go over all these new tiers because the draft happened. That's done with. And then the way it does ADP is that it rolls over every couple days. So it updates every couple days. Now we're far enough from the draft that we have a real look at these rookie ADPs. It's probably steadied out a little bit. So now we can actually look at it and say, okay, this is how we're doing it this summer. Today, we're going to look at each round, the wide receivers going in each round, and pick a guy that we like and a guy that we don't like. Mm-hmm. Each of us, if possible. Some of the rounds, there's not that many guys going in it, but we're going to do our best. That way you can help navigate which wide receivers we love, which ones we don't. Anyone else we don't mention, take them at ADP, means that we're kind of on them. But help you avoid some landmines, find some stars. Let's go, Johnny.
Yep, and like you said, you can go to fantasyalarm.com, go to the NFL menu. We have the updated ADPs. They're updated daily. You can get that for all your current best ball formats, Underdog, if you're on BB10s, NFCC, whatever you're doing right now for best ball. We have those ADPs being updated daily, Coop, because like you said, as we start getting more and more of these drafts done, we start seeing some pretty big ADP movers up and down the boards here. Best Ball Mania is already out. The $5 Puppy Bowl already out, already getting, I think, like 50% full. Like, people love those $5 best ball drafts. In the wide receiver position, we started off here. Why? Because there's just a billion of wide receivers that we can talk about here. And I think the more important trend that I thought we saw going into this year is look how many wide receivers have first round ADPs, Coop. The years past of maybe the anchor RB strategy, the RB heavy guys going first round where 9-10 running backs are going in the first round. You get all that wide receiver depth. Not really so much. It's pretty much a wide receiver heavy format now. Underdog Fantasy, where we're looking here, 3 wide receivers, right? Half point PPR. So you do need more wide receivers on your roster. But I think it's a pretty interesting shift now in strategy to see so many wide receivers with that first round ADP.
Yeah, it's wild. My favorite part of the whole thing is that there's a whole group of guys, and they're very smart. They have the numbers. It does make sense to pepper wide receivers early. But there's a group of guys that are very deep in best ball. And one of them, Pat Carrain, great analyst, well-respected. He's always been kind of a zero RB guy. He won Best Ball Mania 2 last year, but the team that won was one where he took Austin Eckler in the first round.
Right.
So the zero RB guy won with an RB. But still, I'm on board with the strategy. I do a lot of hero RB. In reality, I take best available most times. But it does make sense the way the boards fall. You just have to keep an eye out. Right now, with how the wide receivers are being pushed, you're getting a lot of good RB value later. Yeah. So why don't we jump into
our running back tier show? Probably do next week. That is going to be one of the more interesting, just given where some of these ADPs are. But to your point, we're talking wide receivers, so let's get into it. First round here, Coop. I'll rattle off the first round wide receivers. We can kind of talk about it, who we like, don't like you mentioned, maybe guys who are tweeners on. Justin Jefferson this year is your projected first overall pick. Right after him, Jamar Chase. Tyreek Hill going in the first round. Cooper Kupp still in the first round. Stephon Diggs, A.J. Brown, Devontae Adams, and CeeDee Lamb. That is our current first round wide receiver grouping here. Coop, I think we're both in agreement here. Jefferson, Chase, if you get the opportunity to draft them, you're going to probably more than likely draft them. But who are you targeting in this first round as a wide receiver, and who's your fade as a first round wide receiver here?
Yeah, Jefferson, Chase, 1-2. Either order, honestly. If you want to diversify a little bit, take Chase first if you want. Not that big a deal. For me, and again, to your point, like what is this? 8, 9 wide receivers going in the top 12 in the first
Yeah.
round. It's like that out here. For me, the guy that I find myself skipping over is Cooper Cup, especially because he's going pick 5 overall. 5.5 in ADP. I just find myself either taking a running back there or taking another wide receiver. I just worry about Matt Stafford with the elbow. I know we've seen how crazy it can be when everything goes right. When they stay healthy, he just gets peppered with targets. But right now, he's the only show in town. Defense is going to be keying on him hard. And if Stafford can't really deliver the ball at a super high level like he
Yeah.
did Super Bowl year, I'm a little worried, John. Are you taking Cooper Cup much?
No, I mean, listen, you're basically taking the words right from me here. I was very much down last year on this team once all those news reports kind of came out of how they were managing Matthew Stafford in the elbow during training camp, and then we get into now the season, and he looked awful. Now Cooper Cup was still fairly productive because he was getting. I mean, to be even when they had other guys in there, he was really the only show in town, anyways. I mean, but he was getting all that work. It just feels like he's now coming off of a pretty bad injury. The quarterback's still in question. The offense is questionable. This is not the same Super Bowl team that's going to be out there on either side of the football. So, yeah, that is a pretty obvious fade for me. And this isn't a spot where it's like, oh, I'm going to fade him, but then you go see my ownership percentages, and I have like 10% Cooper Cup. He is off my board. If I lose the Cooper Cup this year because he goes out there and is once again the best player in fantasy football, you know what? That's fine. That happened, right? But I'll take my
Exactly.
chances on that not happening here. I think for me, the other guy that I'm not going to take in the first round here, and could be a shock to some, I'm not in on AJ Brown at his ADP.
Wow.
I was obviously last year the biggest Jalen Hurts, AJ Brown combo guy there was. I don't know if AJ Brown can improve upon what he did last year. That's so to me, he's kind of already being at his ceiling. And if there's any margin of drop off, then he's not a first round player. So for me, it's not that I don't believe in him having a good season. I don't know if he's going to be a first round player this year. Plus, I would rather take Devonta Smith, and we'll talk about him in a second, a round and a half later, right? And I think that there's as much potential for him to be the lead guy in this offense as there is Brown. We talk a lot of times, Scoop, about these offenses that have number 2 wide receivers that are really number 1 wide receivers pretty much anywhere else. And there's a lot of them here in the first couple rounds. So for me, AJ Brown is a guy that I am not going to be drafting at his current ADP here. If I'm looking to stack the Eagles, I'm more likely to go Smith and Hurts than I am Brown and Hurts, just given where he's going in drafts right now.
Yeah, and honestly, like if you look at it, he was getting like 9 targets a game or whatever when Dallas Goedert was out. But when Goddard was healthy, he was at 8 and Devonta Smith was at 7.7. So it wasn't even that far off. And if all 3 guys are healthy, it can be a little thin over there.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah, I have the same concerns. Again, it's like it all boils down to ADP. Last time we like him, this time we don't. A guy that I do like from this group that you can get because of his ADP with your first round pick whenever you feel like it, for the most part, CeeDee Lamb, right? He's going off the board at pick 12, 12 and a half. He's 12 on average. So you can grab at any point there. And I truly believe he's the best pass catcher on that team. He's progressed exactly how we hope guys progress. Well, obviously, Justin Jefferson being amazing
Right.
right from the rip is what you want. But the guy that comes in third year and he's at wide receiver 1, and he doing it as the top pass catcher on the team too. Once Amari Cooper left, there was a big test. Can he go up against the number 1 corner on the other team? Can he go up against Sauce Gardner? Can he go up
Mm-hmm.
against Marshawn Lattimore, whoever it is? He proved that he can. Right. I think he's better than Brandon Cooks, even though I like Cooks. He's obviously better than Michael Gallup.
Right.
Rookie tight end coming in doesn't really matter. Give me CeeDee Lamb. It's about as safe as you can get. And, for me, I'm just trying to not to lose my draft in the first round. You don't win it in the first round, but you can lose it. So I like that pick there. I just want to give a shout out, guys like Albert popping in the chat. What's up, gang? Feel free to throw your questions in here. We'll answer them as we go. We're talking wide receivers today. Johnny, who do you love from this first round?
Listen, again, not to be copycat here, but I mean, I'm right in the with you. It's CeeDee Lamb for me, 1,300 yards, 100 catches, 9 touchdowns last year. And oh, by the way, Dak Prescott didn't play a full season, right? So give him an actual quarterback, a starting quarterback for a full season. And maybe we're looking at CD Lamb now 15, 1,600 yards, right? So I'm with you where he's going in drafts right now. He's my favorite wide receiver at ADP. Listen, Tyreek Hill's great, right? But we don't know what's going on with Tua, right? Like, I know we've talked a little bit about the concussion history, and he's not necessarily as likely to suffer another concussion as he is before, but there's obviously some concern there. And Hill himself, another guy that like had a peak ceiling year. Does he have a similar ceiling to be where he's going in drafts? Devontae Adams, absolute stud wide receiver. We can't even fight that. If Garoppolo, I mean, again, another very injury-prone quarterback, if something happens to him, who's stepping up and throwing the ball to Devontae Adams? So I'm not willing to take sort of those risks there. CeeDee Lamb, to me, proven that he can be productive at that end of first round ADP. That's where I'm looking to go.
Yeah, I feel really good about it. And to your point on, you kind of mentioned it with Tyreek Hill, you mentioned it with AJ Brown. As we get into the second round, a guy that I find myself drafting a ton of is Jalen Waddle, because his average depth of target, we were concerned that he would have the 7-yard ADOT that he had as a rookie. With this new coach, Mike McDaniel, bumped it up to 12 yards. Now he's basically running the Debo Samuel, Brandon Ayuk role. Like, he's a full-time wide receiver. That's why on even fewer targets, he had way more yards in his sophomore year, like 1,300 plus yards. So this guy, Jalen Waddle, I would much rather wait and try and take him in the second round than take Tyreek Hill in the first. And same thing that you say with Devonta Smith and AJ Brown. So in that second round group, we have Garrett Wilson going off the board at 14 ADP,
Yeah.
Amon-Ra St. Brown 15, Jalen Waddle 18.8, Chris Olave 21.8, Devonta Smith 24. So for me, Jalen Waddle at 18, anytime I get him in the second round, I'm doing it. CeeDee Lamb, Jalen Waddle back-to-back start for me. I love it.
Yeah, listen, if you're drafting at the back end of the draft, there's going to be some pretty interesting decisions to be made because of also where the running backs are going at that point. But hard to go do worse than Lamb and Waddle there, as you mentioned. What are your thoughts of Garrett Wilson in his ADP? Aaron Rodgers goes over there. Obviously, should be a quarterback improvement. Rodgers really didn't look all that great last year playing for the Packers. Now, some of that probably had to do with the talent he was throwing the football to at times. I mean, didn't have much there, but he did bring over Allen Lazard. And we talk a lot about how like Rodgers is definitely a my guy type of quarterback. Do you worry that having Allen Lazard there now shines away a little of what Garrett Wilson could be?
I do worry a little bit. I mean, I know Garrett Wilson's the best wide receiver there, right? Like, there's not a situation.
Not even an argument. Yep.
Yeah. So it's not like a situation. Like, I mean, sometimes I look at a guy like Chris Olave from this group, who I'm fading a little bit, and say, hey, you know what? Maybe Michael Thomas could still be Michael Thomas. Not that I think, like, if I had to bet on it, I wouldn't put Michael Thomas ahead, but there's a discussion to be had there. I think Garrett Wilson is the best guy, but you're right. Allen Lazard over the last 3 years, it's only him and DK Metcalf that have had double-digit end zone targets in each of those years. Rodgers picks his guy, like you said, fires at him, and they're keeping Corey Davis there. So for me, Garrett Wilson, he's the kind of guy that I don't really go out of my way to draft him, but if he's there at the right pick, I will. Some of these other guys, I'm not picking. The one guy from this group that I'm not picking in this format, and we've talked it to death, is Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just personally, I know that he's got at least another year of high-end fantasy relevance because of the Jameson Williams suspension. But I just look at he's a guy
it, can you?
Exactly.
You just can't get over this guy, can you?
You know what? It's just one of those things where at the end of the day, if he had done what Jalen Waddle did and transformed from a 7-yard ADOT guy into like a full-time flanker that was running like, longer routes and putting up huge numbers, which you need in best ball, right? Like, we're looking for guys that can have those spike weeks, but he didn't do that. His ADOT was 6.9 yards again last year. He got absolutely peppered with like 150 targets, but still just barely cracked 1,100 yards. It's like, with most guys that get those targets, like look at AJ Brown with the way he breaks tackles and his ADOT. Sure. He had the same number of targets as Amon-Ra St. Brown, but he had like 1,500 yards, right? So for me, just for this particular format, I don't really love Amon-Ra St. Brown in best ball.
So who do we think their downfield guy who do you think their downfield guy will be? Is it Marvin Jones now that he's back there? Or, I mean, there's no Jameson Williams. Obviously, they don't have DJ Chark. Josh Reynolds is on the team still, but he kind of profiles more like Amon-Ra St. Brown does. Do they think there's a chance that we see, him kind of stretch the field a little bit more, or,
they might have to, honestly. They don't I think what's going to have to happen here is like, cause you need a guy that can tether his foot to the line and be the big player. I think what we're going to see is Sam Laporta doing a lot of that, kind of splitting out, being either a big slot tethered player or a just straight up playing split end, right? But he's not a field stretcher. So I don't know. Maybe they do move Amon-Ra to the outside, but that's going to be a tough gig for him if he's going outside facing the number one corner. He's not particularly big, not particularly fast. I'm just not sure if he's going to thrive as a downfield player. He seems to do best with the underneath stuff.
Yep, that's fine. I get just looking at their depth chart, and you're like, well, somebody has to sort of be the guy. It could very well be Marvin Jones. I mean, certainly
That's
there.
why in a redraft league, full PPR with 3 wide receiver spots, you draft Amon-Ra St. Brown. He's in your lineup every single week, and he offers a really good floor. Just for best ball formats, I mean, he needs to get a lot of targets to do these big games. You know, it's just that's the nature of a 60-yard ADOT.
Right. For me in this range, I mentioned already, Devonta Smith is where I'd rather go.
Yeah.
Again, I like still the Eagles. Certainly like their offense here. He's not as big of a discount, obviously, this year as he was last year. Comparison to AJ Brown, but I just feel like that there's a path for AJ Brown, for Devonta Smith here to potentially challenge to be that guy. I mean, he was the best wide receiver to come out of that draft class. His route running is ridiculous. His speed is ridiculous. His hands last year, he showed he was making some crazy, catches there. Jalen Hurts is not the most accurate passer. He's gotten better with better receivers. He's improved. If they take another step forward with him throwing the football, there's a chance that maybe both of those wide receivers crack the low end, wide receiver 1 range. But I'd rather take my shot on Devonta Smith here this year, being that guy where he's going in drafts, end of the second round and end of the first round for AJ Brown.
Yeah, I mean, and we're going nuts for Jordan Addison because he won the Fred Biletnikoff, and Jalen Hyatt for winning the Fred Biletnikoff. This guy didn't just win the Fred Biletnikoff for the best wide receiver. He won the Heisman Trophy for the best player in all of college football. Mm-hmm. Like, we're forgetting at times how good this guy can be, and he's still very young. We expect these guys to immediately pop and just be superstars right away. I mean, the guy's 24 years old. This could be the year where he really pops and takes it to another level.
Yep.
So, a lot of good picks in the second round. What do you think about the third round, John? Is there anybody that just right off the bat? Because for me, sometimes I look at it and there's one guy I love or one guy I hate. Is there a name that just jumps at you right away, either way from this group?
So I think the conversation has to be had on Calvin Ridley here.
Right.
Because hasn't played in over a year, basically a year and a half, because he cut out that final half year with the Falcons. He claims he's ready to go. We saw the talent that he was in that last full season that he played. It was, a wide receiver 1 level player. Now he's on an offense. We loved what we saw out of Jacksonville last season. We loved what we saw out of Trevor Lawrence, looking like that true 101 over first overall pick quarterback. If Calvin Ridley's back in there to be an alpha and playing like an alpha, then he is probably more so in the tier of the guys we just talked about than the tier that he's in now. And there's a lot of questions, I think, with this group in the third round. So for me, I took Calvin Ridley in our staff best ball that we did last week. Some people were commenting like Calvin Ridley in the third round, ? It's like, well, kind of looking at where we're at here. And if we're playing best ball, we're playing upside. I think there's a real chance here for Ridley to pop. So for me, I'm willing to spend the ADP on him going towards the middle end of that third round right now.
I mean, that's what his ADP is now. It now shows he's going at, now it's updated after a few days, 35.8, right? That's the third round. It's the end of it, but that's where you got to take this guy. So, yeah, I'm on board with that. I think he immediately fills the Zay Jones role. So they had Christian Kirk as a slot guy that would move to flanker. They had Zay Jones as the full-time guy opposite him, and Marvin Jones would be the part-time guy. Now Zay Jones becomes the part-time guy. Calvin Ridley's a full-time guy for Trevor Lawrence. I mean, it doesn't get much better, right? Unless you're one of the few Trevor Lawrence haters, difficult to find them these days, right?
Hard to hate him after the year he had last year, given his pedigree of like never losing. Urban Meyer just really tanked that team for a season. So
yeah, so I'm in with you on Ridley. I was big on DK Metcalf. Now I'm pumping the brakes just a little bit. I still don't mind taking him around here, but I'm waiting for his ADP to fall a little bit on the Jackson Smith and Jigba fallout. I'm still taking T. Higgins here. I don't see why, for the same exact reasons that we like Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle. It's super highly consolidated targets among two guys that play near 100% snap shares with one of the best quarterbacks in the league. I don't think it gets much better. I love that wide receiver 2 discount because he's not a wide receiver 2, he's a wide receiver 1.
And I wonder if he's even falling a little bit because there's sort of that uncertainty around like his status. Now he's there. We know he's there, but like there's a lot of uncertainty around him. But you're looking at another guy that has 75 plus catch upside, 1,100 yards, can be well within his range there. And, he can approach, double digit touchdowns there too, just with the amount they throw. And if something happens with Joe Mixon here, they may be less inclined to run the ball as much as well and kind of spread it because they still have Tyler Boyd, right? They still have a legitimate wide receiver 3. So I'm with you. Didn't they sign Irv Smith too? Isn't Irv Smith on that team too? So a little bit of a better pass catching tight end than they've had in the past. I know you're not that high on him as a tight end for fantasy, but like he is a better option at tight end than maybe they've had previously, sort of given the skill set for Irv Smith there. So I'm with you. I like T. Higgins there, especially that you're getting him in the 3rd round, where we just talked about Devonta Smith and Jalen Waddle in the 2nd round. So you're getting him a little bit later. When it comes to a fade for me, and this is a guy that I've faded now for a few years, and it's Deebo Samuel. Last year you kind of put me onto that whole if you compare the Vegas totals to other wide receivers in this range, he's the only one without being projected for 1,000 yards receiving, and that was because fantasy was projecting him for 500 yards rushing as well. Well, I mean, they have Christian McCaffrey there now. He's definitely not going to get the rushing yards, and quarterback's huge question mark for me. He's a guy that has shown some fragility the last couple of years because of the way they've used him as well. Certainly he's an explosive player when on the field and healthy, but it just doesn't seem like this 49ers offense is going to be built enough to move him into the range where he's being drafted right now.
Yeah, and that's why we look at those Vegas odds, right? Because in 2021, we looked at it and everyone was taking Brandon Ayuk. And Vegas had Deebo Samuel with a higher yardage total. I was like, okay, these guys usually know a little something. So we were taking Deebo instead of Ayuk then. That worked out for us. Last year we looked at it. They didn't like Deebo. We didn't like Deebo. He got hurt, but it turned out we were right there. So in this case, I'm just worried with Deebo. I got the same pick for this spot. I'm worried just there's one football, and there's a George Kittle, and there's a Christian McCaffrey, and there's Brandon Ayuk, and there's a quarterback that we don't really know what's going to happen. Is it going to be Trey Lance? Is Brock Purdy going to come back from the elbow and be ready to rock and roll? Just too much for a 3rd round pick. Too much uncertainty. Too much uncertainty.
I agree. Anybody else that you're fading here, Coop?
Like I said, I have a temporary hold on DK Metcalf. Sure. That's Deebo is the guy that I had, but temporary hold on DK Metcalf. I want the rookie fever hype of JSN to push that ADP down. I think JSN, if he's going to hurt anybody, it'll be Tyler Lockett, because JSN and Tyler Lockett are similar type guys in terms of size and skill set. DK Metcalf plays split end. It's a totally different position. He's not coming off the field. He is a red zone monster. I'm just right now, I'm just waiting. I want to see how far down we can get him to go. And then I'll start taking him again. So
my low worry with Metcalf, of course, I've said this to you a few times, is can Geno Smith repeat what he did last year? Right. That's the question. If he can't, then the wide receiver is going to take a little bit of a step back there. It's only a 1-year sample on Geno Smith, but like you said, maybe that's all he needed. He needed that opportunity, right? So we'll see.
I was looking at the Geno. I know this is a quarterback conversation. I was looking at Geno, and he had a decent number of carries without very many rushing touchdowns. Maybe Geno's even better this year, John. What do you think about that?
Listen, we like the rushing floor for quarterbacks 100%. Next round of guys here. Amari Cooper, DJ Moore, Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, and Drake London in round 4. Coop, talk to me. Who's the one fade for you of this group?
Yeah, I just want to mention right now, this is how crazy it is. This is how crazy it is this year. This is through 4 rounds, 48 wide receivers. Or how many wide receivers is that? There's not 40. There's
wide receiver 24.
24, man. 24 wide receivers going in the first 4 rounds. It is jammed.
Basically half. 24 of the first 48 picks at ADP right now are wide receivers.
Yeah. So in the 4th round, I'm still drafting core players personally. So I'm trying to avoid uncertainty wherever possible. We've actually seen this happen before with this exact player. And I'm talking about DJ Moore, where we all sat back with Matt Rule's Panthers in 2020, and we said, well, DJ Moore is the best guy by far, so he's going to score the most fantasy points. And he was going wide receiver 9, and Robbie Anderson and Curtis Samuel were going wide receiver literally 55 and 60, right? And then it turned out that the ball was spread a little more thin, and it was a lot closer. And those guys actually ended up being better than DJ Moore in certain formats. For me personally, I think DJ Moore, once again, is the best wide receiver on the team. And once again, we don't know who the quarterback's going to like. We don't know how the ball is going to be distributed. We don't know if he's going to be as good as we think he can be. So until I see the Bears actually throw the ball at a level of a modern NFL football team, not like the 1950s team they were running last year, it's hard for me to draft him over some of these other guys. Like I'll say right now, the guy that I really like is Amari Cooper. He's going at the top of this round, but like I would take Amari Cooper over anyone in this group and over a couple people in the group ahead, simply because he was like 20 yards off his best season ever last year. He was wide receiver 10, and that
Yeah.
was most of the year with Jacoby Brissett and a rusty Deshaun Watson. They didn't really do a whole lot. They brought in Elijah Moore, but big deal. He's a cast off from another team. Like he's really set to be the number one target for Deshaun Watson. So that's a guy I'm in on. Mari Cooper. I'm out on DJ Moore. But those guys go at the top of this round, John. So of the rest of these guys, we have Mike Williams, DeAndre Hopkins, Christian Watson, Jerry Jeudy, Drake London. Let's say Amari's gone, DJ Moore's gone. Who do you like out of that group? If you say you went 2 running backs early and you got to take a wide out here.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going back to Jerry Jeudy, man.
Yeah.
I am going to give this Broncos offense a second chance, and we're going to get them at a much bigger discount than we had to pay for them last year. I'm going to believe that Sean Payton goes in there and understands how to run an offense, knows how to time an offense, doesn't need a coach specifically there to like watch the time for him. You know, right? Like I'm going to have an understanding that a better offensive coach or better coach in general is going in there to implement a system and that they're all going to get on the same page and they're going to be good. So I'm willing in this range to go with Jerry Jeudy, willing in this range to go with Mike Williams. The Quentin Johnson draft pick is a little interesting to me because he profiles a lot like Mike Williams. Tall, big, fast, outside wide receiver. Now, they've had other guys that are burners down the field like that before, but they used a first-round pick on it. So, what does that mean for Mike Williams here, that the Chargers were going to make that investment at that position? That's my lone worry with Williams. I love the Chargers stack. You can get the Chargers top wide receivers and their quarterback in round 4, 5, 6 range. So you talking about like stacking in Dustin says Mike Williams can't stay healthy. I agree with you. That's probably one of the reasons why they made that investment for sure. But for this year, it's like, okay, you draft Mike Williams in round four. They just took another guy in the first round that profiles a lot like him. They can't be down on Mike Williams. When he's on the floor, he's at the field, he's an absolute monster. So I still have some interest in Mike Williams, but I'm definitely worried a bit about that draft selection.
Yeah, I'm a little worried about it. The thing is, it's like I kind of am interested in taking Mike Williams, Keenan Allen, Quentin Johnson, wherever, just because I think their ADP is a little depressed because the offense last year was so heavily invested in dumping it down. Joe Lombardi, I don't think people realize that Justin Herbert last year, if you take all the quarterbacks that threw 150 passes, there's about 40 of them. So we're talking people that played at least like half the season or so. We had some injuries. We had enough guys that play a decent sample size. Of those guys, Justin Herbert was 38th in average depth of target, 6.9 yards. That's the same ADOT as Amon-Ra St. Brown. Just think about those dump offs. That's how he was dumping it down. Obviously, when you throw that many passes to Austin Eckler, it's going to do that to you. But this is Kellen Moore's show now. Kellen Moore got booted from the Cowboys because he was throwing the ball too much, because he was scoring too fast. Mike McCarthy said he wants his defense to rest.
Yeah.
I don't want that in fantasy football. I want rock'em sock'em robots. I want a tired defense that lets up a touchdown right away and we get the ball right back. That's what I want. So
and we'll talk about the Chargers, because especially when you get to the running back position, because Austin Eckler, where he's going in drafts, the guy is in half point PPR. Austin Eckler, RB1, RB2 the last 2 years. And yet he's going at the end of the first round. And as you just said, the offense is tailored to feed him the football. So super interested to go what's going on there. Yeah, listen, Dustin, again, like I said, it's a little interesting what that draft pick certainly feels like a replacement for Mike Williams, because Coop, as we've said, the GM came out and said Keenan Allen's a lifer. He's here forever, right? So they gotta find that replacement, for Mike Williams, because they're not replacing Keenan Allen anywhere soon. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So before we move on to the next round, I gotta ask your thoughts on Christian Watson. Christian Watson, he's obviously, to us, the wide receiver one for that team. They added a second-round wide receiver, and they added a tight end to go with Romeo Doubs. So they added Jaden Reed, and they added Luke Musgrave. They also added Tucker Kraft. So they added 2 tight ends. They're giving a lot of weapons here for Jordan Love to sort out. Christian Watson at the 44th pick off the board, wide receiver 22. You doing it or no?
I can't spend that draft capital not knowing the quarterback situation. And
This
I
is the
know
format for it too.
I know there are people that are high on Jordan Love, definitely the format for it, right? Like you can get these wide receivers, you can take Jordan Love way back in drafts and like you're ready to go. You want to spend a 4th round pick on an unknown situation at quarterback? I mean, we've seen what happens with bad quarterbacks. Wide receiver production isn't there. So that's where I struggle with. Well, now Love looked great in that one throw he threw to Christian Watson in that game where Aaron Rodgers came out. But I mean, I don't know. I'll have to see some better reporting on Jordan Love before I spend that draft capital there on Christian Watson.
I need them to talk about him the way they talked about Patrick Mahomes before Mahomes even played, right?
Yeah,
Like that's what we
I
need.
want the shorts workout, slow motion, summer throws. I'm like, all right, the
arm
hype,
slot.
the hype videos are out there, and then we can sell it. But for now,
Exactly.
I'm a little worried. On that.
The one time I am doing it, I've been doing a bunch of these. I have found myself in the super flex drafts. Sometimes if I'm picking on the turn or near the turn, I'll sit there and I'll say I need a second quarterback, and I'll see the ADP for Jordan Love and Christian Watson are very close together in Superflex, and you can just go bing bang and stack them. Sometimes I do that. That's the one occasion, but yeah, I'm not just drafting either of those guys on their own at this point. 5th round here, Johnny, we have Keenan Allen going first in this round, then Terry McLaurin, Christian Kirk, Michael Pittman, rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba, and then Chris Godwin. How you feeling about that crew? That's the 5th round for these rookie drafts.
I mean, best ball drafts, but yeah, for
best ball.
Keenan Allen again. I'm fine running into there again. He's safe. There's a good floor here, but as you mentioned, second half of last year. He was wide receiver 8, right? So like, I like Keenan Allen there.
Second half of last year was wide receiver 2.
Wide receiver 2. Yes. Even better,
last
right?
8 games, it was Justin Jefferson 1. He was wide receiver 2. There were some injuries mixed in there, but yeah, Keenan Allen was firing on all cylinders.
Yeah, my problem with this tier is that to me, Keenan Allen's the only one with a quarterback. So that's kind of where I'm queuing in now. Christian Kirk, I lied. Christian Kirk has Trevor Lawrence, but Calvin Ridley's there. Is Kirk gonna have the same season he had last year with Calvin Ridley there? I guess that's the biggest question. But McLaurin, Sam Howell, Michael Pittman with Anthony Richardson, Jackson and Jigba having to deal with Lockett, who's actually going after him, and DK Metcalf is there. Chris Godwin's got Baker Mayfield throwing him the football now. I mean, for me, it's Keenan Allen.
Yeah, I know you, Baker. You guys don't get along, dude. We know that. That's well documented. So I feel that. And yeah, it does scare me. Terry McLaurin scares me. Jackson Smith and Jigba, I think, is going to have a Chris Godwin-like start to his career, which means that this year I'm out on him, honestly, because I think that it's going to start with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett as the split end and flanker with JSN in the slot. That means that he's probably going to come out for 2 wide receiver sets the way that Chris Godwin did. People forget Chris Godwin sat behind Mike Evans and Deshaun Jackson for 2 years. And then once D Jackson and Adam Humphries were gone, it was Chris Godwin as the flanker that moved to slot for 3 wide receiver sets. Then it was wheels up. Mm-hmm. That's what I see for JSN. I have JSN as my number 1 wide receiver in Dynasty, but in redraft, I have a different guy, a guy we're going to talk about in a little bit. So I know it often happens. JSN goes off the board first in the rookie draft. He goes off the board first in these best ball drafts. I'm probably not drafting him in any leagues, honestly. From this group, I like Keenan Allen. If I'm going to take somebody else, I'll take a shot on Michael Pittman. He, to me, is the obvious number 1 target for Anthony Richardson. He's going to play last year, if you go look at the snap shares, he was legit playing 100% of snaps in a lot of those games. Not 95, not 96, every single one. So I see him playing every snap, and then Josh Downs and Alec Pierce can fight it out for who's going to be the next guy. So I'm fading JSN. Sorry I didn't catch the rookie fever on that. I'm going to be drafting some rookies.
Yeah.
So, but yeah, I'm not going there with that one.
No, I agree with you. Again, he's being drafted ahead of Tyler Lockett now, slightly ahead of Tyler Lockett. But like, what is it? What is it about Tyler Lockett that people aren't in on over over JSN at this point, right? Like it just to me that doesn't make. And I'm not overly high on Seattle this year, anyways. I do kind of feel like last year was a little bit of a perfect storm fluke here. If Gino does it again, great. I'll be happy to be proven wrong there. But you were getting DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett at like ridiculous discounts last year because everybody thought like Drew Lock was the quarterback. Now they're kind of priced more appropriately. So, I kind of don't know what the upside is going to be, there with those plays. So that's kind of why I'm out on there. Pittman's interesting because of Richardson. He's got to throw the football to somebody, and he's kind of an interesting talent. So, I don't mind that spot either. Next here, Ayuk, Lockett, as we mentioned, Mike Evans, George Pickens, and rookie Jordan Addison here. Coop, who are we keying in on in the 6th round?
Well, I kind of spoiled it the last round, and Kevin Tompkins in the chat threw it out there as well. Kevin Tompkins, Fantasy Alarm, thanks for joining us. He said his ADP is incredibly inefficient. Talking about JSN, Jordan Addison should be drafted ahead of him in best ball. I 100% agree. That was the guy I was referring to, where when I look at, even the teams that use the most 3 wide receiver sets of any team, the most they're getting up to is 70 or 80% of the snaps, which means one of those guys is still not playing a full snap share, right? I look at the Seahawks, and for the early going, I think JSN will be the odd man out. When I look at the Vikings, I think Jordan Addison is immediately better than KJ Osborne, which means he steps right into that Adam Thielen role, getting a full snap share. He has the highest short-term upside. He's the guy I rank 1 out of the rookies in redraft and best ball. So of this group, honestly, give me Jordan Addison over all of them. Tyler Lockett, I'm doing the same thing I'm doing with DK Metcalf. We're taking out the yellow tape. We're putting it around him. We're saying this is closed temporarily, and let's see how far that ADP can come down. If it comes down far enough, then I'm in, because I do think he's going to be playing his normal snap share, at least for this year, until the guard changes there. But for now, we're going to wait and see how long that goes. The real questions are guys like Ayuk and Mike Evans, John. Like guys like that, quarterback situation dicey, target situation kind of dicey. What are you feeling either of those guys, or what are your thoughts on them?
I mean, I don't know how you're picking Mike Evans here. Unless they make another quarterback signing, which doesn't seem likely. You're going to be looking at Trask or Baker Mayfield as your quarterback here, and I haven't seen enough of Baker to want to trust anybody. Sure, OBJ had like 1,000-yard year with Baker Mayfield. Maybe Mike Evans just catches balls downfield, but he's probably on pace to have his worst season of his career. I like the Addison call for a lot of things that you mentioned there. Just the fact that he's going to be that 2 on that offense. Pickens is all about quarterback play, right? Yeah. Does Kenny Pickett take the next step forward? And if he does, great. Pickens showed some pretty ridiculous ability, but what do they still have there? Deontay Johnson. They trade for the corpse of Allen Robinson. They have Pat Freiermuth, right? They have other guys there that can
drafted Darnell Washington, dude. Najee Harris can catch the football. I'm honestly, this falls into the category of Tua last year. Except last year, I truly believe that Tua could take a step forward. With Pickett, I'm just not sure. But when you look at these ADPs, instead of drafting George Pickens is going ahead. Deontay Johnson got 147 targets last year. It's like it boggles my mind. Like if you're taking George Pickens in the 6th round, then you're going to have, the people that take Pickens believe in Deontay Johnson. They believe in Pat Freiermuth. If you're going to take Pickens there, you should have Kenny Pickett on every single team, right? Like if so facto. It's same thing with people taking Tyreek Hill last year at like 12 overall. Like, obviously, if you think Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle can be that good, you should have Tua because he's free, right? Kenny Pickett's free. So, for me, I'd rather not draft any of these guys and take a stab on Kenny Pickett. Because if, it could be a situation where Kenny Pickett is good and Pat Freiermuth and Deontay Johnson are both good and George Pickens isn't. So, not only it's like Robin Hood where you have to shoot the arrow out of the air and then the other arrow has to hit the, you know what I mean? I'll just pick Robin Hood. Instead of
you'll take the QB that's your QB3, right, and hope that he gives you weeks where he's a QB1, right? So
exactly. And if it turns out he does suck, then I didn't waste the high pick. I didn't waste a 6th round pick on George Pickens, right? It's like you get access to the same bet at a much cheaper value. So George Pickens, I'm not doing much of. Seventh round, John. Still, I mean, so many wide receivers off the board. So this is through 6 rounds, right? So 6 rounds, 35 wide receivers are going. That's how far it's been pushed.
35 of the first 72 picks in ADP are wide
I
receivers.
blame Pete Overzet. I blame Kevin Tompkins and Pete Overzet. Their propaganda has caused this. And when we get to the running back show, which we'll probably just do next week, right?
Yeah.
It's the most fun one. And then we'll do maybe quarterbacks and tight ends together.
This is why I feel like I'm also getting trapped a little bit, because I see the wide receiver depth that continues to sort of fall through here too. Like, we're in round 7 and there are Kadarius Toney, Hollywood Brown, Treylon Burks, Deontay Johnson, Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks is your round 7. I mean, if not this year, when for Kadarius Toney, right? If he can stay healthy, they don't have Juju anymore. They don't have obviously Tyreek Hill. They still have Travis Kelce. Sure, he's the number 1 guy there, but like, if not now for Kadarius Toney with Patrick Mahomes, when Kadarius Toney with Patrick Mahomes? He's my number 1 target in this range here. I think there are a few guys that you can draft in this range and be happy with. I have Toney as a wide receiver 2 on a handful of my best ball teams because I've gone that running back early strategy there. So talk to me, Coop. Thoughts on Toney, and then where else are you going in round 7?
I'm drafting Toney, man. When I get to this range, I'm like, just give me the crazy upside. This dude, he's electric, and like his interviews are electric. He's a fun guy to root for. I will say this: everyone harps on yards per route run, right? It's such a great metric because it eliminates the sample sizes, right? You can have a guy with a 35% snap share that has a yards per run over 2, or close to 3, and you say, okay, more routes equals more yards. And Kadarius Toney, by far the best yards per route run guy on that team. His target share when he was in the game was awesome. It's just that they couldn't really get him in there because he didn't really know the plays right away.
Yeah.
Right?
And then he got hurt. He pulled his hamstring.
Got hurt. Yeah, I mean that's obviously the floor with that guy. So I like there's a couple this round. I love this round.
Yeah,
right?
I think there's Treylon Burks for me. I think Treylon Burks is the next guy that we can target here. I know people shy away from the Titans because of their passing offense, and they got Derrick Henry, and they're going to run the football, and Ryan Tannehill, and AJ Brown was great with Tennessee, right? And they had guys that Corey Davis had a good season in this same exact offense, running the football as heavily as they do. Treylon Burks, another guy who went healthy and on the field, clearly showed he was the best wide receiver that they have on that roster. Again, I don't mind taking a Treylon Burks here. Now, I wouldn't take Treylon Burks if I've waited on wide receivers. I feel like there's maybe a little bit of a lower floor here, but I do like Treylon Burks as my wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, if I'm just buying out and going all out wide receivers here.
And there's a misconception among fantasy gamers where they load up too hard on offenses they think are really good. A lot of times what happens when teams are really good and they're really going for it, they have a ton of weapons and it's spread too thin. That's not good for huge upside in fantasy. We want these teams with their back against sometimes teams with their back against the ropes, like the Vikings, who are just kind of trying to get by with what they have for cap space, or teams that have these ghost ship offenses, right? Like when the Lions were tanking, Amon-Ra St. Brown got a ton of targets. Preston Williams was relevant. Robert Foster on the Bills. I saw Kenny Britt have 1,000 yards from Jared Goff on a tanking Ram. Terrell Pryor, right? So if the Cardinals are going to be doing this tanking situation, if the Titans are only going to have Treylon Burks and Chig Okonkwo and like Nick Westbrook-Akine, ball got to go somewhere, right? So give me Marquise Brown. Give me Treylon Burks. I'm very much interested in players like that in situations where we can say, hey, it's got to go somewhere, right? So I'm down for those guys for sure. Deontay Johnson's one where, he had the targets last year. He's going to score more touchdowns this year. He's not going to score 0 again, but, it's hard to bet on Pickett. I will say I would much rather have Deontay Johnson here than George Pickens the round before.
Right.
What Gabe Davis, Brandon Cooks, John, you doing it? Kind of similar idea.
I'm in on Cooks. I've never been on Davis, but I'm in on Cooks here. I don't think Brandon Cooks has lost anything. I think Brandon Cooks just played on Houston, right? And there was it 2 years ago? Brandon Cooks was just getting 100 targets a game. Like he was the only wide receiver they were basically throwing the football to. So you now get him on what should be a better offense. He's going to be the wide receiver 2 on that team. CeeDee Lamb's going to draw a lot of that coverage. Brandon Cooks, what do you have? That run of like 5 seasons of 1,000 yards? Like he is still a very talented wide receiver. And if anything else, by not really playing last year, maybe he saved some mileage on his body. So Yeah, give me Brandon Cooks here in this round for sure.
When you look at Brandon Cooks, is like if you sort his age, which he still
I was gonna
somehow
say,
is not, he's still just about 30, right? Like if you
yeah.
sort his age and wide receivers and sort by yards, it's legit like
He's
Jerry Rice,
29 still 29.
29 still, right? So if you sort guys are 29
On your
or
age
younger, like
apex, you know?
career yards,
Yeah.
yeah, still in the age apex. Guys that are 29 or younger yards, it's legit like Jerry Rice, Randy Moss, Larry Fitzgerald, Antonio Brown, Mike Evans, and then Brandon Cooks. Like he's like top 10 on that list. He's
Mhm.
way up there. People don't realize that that's the kind of guy this is. He's explosive and can score at any moment. And with a good quarterback, the touchdowns come too. You
That's
know,
what I'm
so
looking at.
with
100% what I'm looking at. 134 targets in 2021, 90 catches,
no problem.
1037 for yards, 6 scores with who throwing him the football, right? Like Davis Mills and company, right?
Doesn't
So
matter. Exactly. So that's why I'm in on Brandon Cooks. With Gabe Davis and Dawson Knox, I warned people this offseason. I said, hey, if they weren't going to do it last year when the opportunity was right in front of their face, when are they going to do it? And look what happens. They bring in Dalton Kincaid, who's probably going to play a ton of slot, be a big target guy. So Dawson Knox probably dust. Gabe Davis, it's a big year for him. They could still even trade for a guy like Hopkins. I know they said he's not leaving, but
yeah.
that team, I'm just surprised. The Bills don't have a single wide receiver on the depth chart that was drafted day 1 or 2 of the NFL draft. Not by them, not drafted by any other team. The highest drafted player they have is Gabe Davis as a 4th-round pick.
Yeah.
At some point, they're going to need to get talent and try and win the Super Bowl.
This next round's pretty interesting here. Round 8, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers, Michael Thomas, Cortland Sutton. Thoughts here initially on Michael Thomas. I know you've tweeted about him, gotten a little flack for it. You've written articles about it. Explain to the people why you were in on Michael Thomas this year.
True life, I'm addicted to drafting Michael Thomas.
Yeah.
I cannot stop. He's the wide receiver 45 off the board. And the reality with this guy is that people think he's a diva, or people think that like the injury situation was his fault. He came back to like, so the year he rolled his ankle or had the high ankle sprain, he came back and played in the playoffs. So he hasn't missed 3 straight years. He played in the playoffs of that year. That delay is part of the reason that he missed the next year, because they told him not to have surgery. He played, had surgery, and then had a setback, so missed the entire next year. Then last year he comes out, totally different injury. It was a dislocation of one of his toes, not the big toe, mind you, the toe next to that one. If that's healed, I have no reason why Michael Thomas can't be a top tier wide receiver again. Last year, when he played in 3 games, he was on pace for 90 targets, which would have been top 10, 90 receptions, which would have tied DK Metcalf. He scored 3 touchdowns in 3 games. He gets a quarterback upgrade, right? Like we sit here and say he's going to get hurt. Tell me what injury it's going to be, because it wasn't the high ankle sprain last year. It was a random toe injury. So I'm in on Michael Thomas. And the hot take that got me a lot of flack and a lot of tags and retweets and quote tweets was, I said, hey, we think Chris Olave will be the top fantasy wide receiver on that team, but there's a world where maybe it is Michael Thomas. So I'm definitely interested there. The Rashid Shaheed, I have no interest in. So yeah, give me Michael Thomas. Of this group, guys, I'm probably not drafting is just like I'm probably not going to go with Quentin Johnston, just because I still believe in Mike Williams. I still believe in Keenan Allen. I believe that he's got a long-term high upside future, but that comes with the fading away of the other guys, in my opinion, John.
Yeah.
Anyone else from this group, John? This wide receiver round 8, Jahan Dotson, Quentin Johnston, Zay Flowers.
So I think this is the interesting. You just touched on his name there quickly, Zay Flowers. So you look at where the Ravens passing offense is now being drafted, right? Lamar Jackson's going right up there, like 3rd or 4th round, I think there's ADP is. Mark Andrews is sort of in that same range. You don't hit their first wide receiver until now. And they come in bunches too. We'll talk about it. Odell Beckham and Bateman both are in the next round. So you get your quarterback here. If you're talking stacks for best ball here, sure, you want Lamar Jackson and Mark Andrews. Makes a lot of sense. But now you have a decision to make. What wide receivers are you paying attention to here? I think Zay Flowers is super interesting for just from an athletic standpoint. I don't know if OBJ can stay healthy enough after 2 these surgeries, things like that for me, and Bateman coming off the injury. So for me, Flowers and Sutton are the 2 guys I'm looking at.
Yeah, I'm feeling good about it too. I even kind of like Jahan Dotson in this format just because he was a touchdown monster, man. Right?
Yep.
Was he like in this format? If you score a touchdown, you're in the lineup. So I kind of like.
And he did it with average quarterbacking too. Wentz, Heineke, right? So how is he going to be worse than those guys? I don't think so, right? So I'm fine with it.
Yeah, so that brings us through the top 46 wide receivers. So we're talking basically, we're into the wide receiver 4 range now.
Yeah,
So what we should do moving forward, this is round 9 and on. This is 18 round drafts in best ball. Let's maybe briefly mention guys that we're fading, but for the most part, now you're just picking whoever you like. The
yeah,
ADP kind of goes out the window. So let's just look at guys for the last 10 minutes or so of the show, guys that we like from these later rounds, maybe mention guys like, oh, I'll never draft Odell Beckham Jr. who's
right.
going in this round. So maybe throw those guys out there. But who do you like moving forward? Let's round 9: Jamison Williams, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham, Elijah Moore.
Yeah, honestly, this is a spot like you mentioned where it's like maybe you don't start drafting by ADP, you start drafting by where you are in the draft and think you can grab guys. So briefly back, I like Courtland Sutton at round 8. Round 9, I'm probably not taking any of those players. I'd much rather maybe just move ahead a little bit, target someone like Alan Lazard, somebody that I think maybe Juju Smith-Schuster steps in and is that number one guy in New England. I kind of like the upside potential for those two over anybody really in that range. Williams, obviously interesting, but suspended for 6 games. So
Yeah.
depends where he is for you. And I think Williams probably falls a little bit continually because of that. So
Yeah, I kind of like the idea. I kind of like the idea of Williams, man. I trust the talent
trade for
and
best ball, sure.
right. And it's not
You
like
just
a
got 6 weeks of no production. You better hope you hang in there for the first 6 weeks, right? Like,
and of all the things, it's like this is more of a policy issue. It's a conflict of interest issue, but it doesn't make him a bad guy. You know what I mean? Like playing DraftKings or putting up a couple parlays in doesn't make you a bad guy in the, it's not like he's, putting in bets with the mob here, like it's not like he was like DUIs, things like that. Way worse for me. Like for me, I don't think that the coaching staff looks at this guy. Obviously, they're disappointed, but they don't look at him and say, this guy has character problems, in my
right.
opinion. I think he's going to bounce back pretty well. So of these guys, I think I like him best. Rashad Bateman, I kind of like, but again, it's I want to see how those ADP settle out between the 3 wide receivers: Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Odell Beckham.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm with you. I kind of like fading this whole group.
Yeah, again, for
Running
me,
back to
and Kev
quarterback.
Tompkins in here, massive tier gap after Sutton. Right, this is
Huge.
where I like to talk about drafting like who you want, when you want. Once we get to this point, if you're targeting wide receivers, you're just drafting really your guy. You're going to draft the guy that you think can be productive on your roster, and or at least have an opportunity here to score some points. I look at someone like Jonathan Mingo, Jalen Hyatt. This is where you look at some of those rookies. I think that have an opportunity to go into their teams right away and be productive. Sky Moore, year 2 at Kansas City. Maybe he finally steps into a spot to be productive. So I'd rather take those guys over some of the veterans that we know are existing or guys that are really buried on the depth chart that we find sort of in this range here. Like, what is Jacoby Myers going to be this year? Like,
Right.
you can't trust
Exactly.
Jacoby Myers here. I'd much rather take any of those other guys we just mentioned over Jacoby Myers.
Exactly. It's the way you build your lineup. There is a world where if you go heavy at all the other positions, you want to draft a couple safe guys to give you a floor, right? But in best ball, especially with these tournaments, you want upside. So guys like even Juju Smith-Schuster playing that Jacoby Myers role in New England. Juju, Myers, Tyler Boyd, Hunter Renfro, those guys, man, the low A dot slot type guys, the ceiling isn't gonna, really move the needle. So I'm with you. I'm like, yeah, give me Mingo, give me Hyatt, give me these guys that could set the world on fire with big, long touchdowns with their speed. I mean, Jalen Hyatt, one of the fastest wide receivers from
Right.
this class. So, yeah, of this group, I'm in on those guys, and I'm going to fade guys like, I mean, I just don't. KJ Osborne going here must be a holdover from before the draft because his ADP, right? Like,
Yeah,
that
because
has
Addison's
to.
gonna just immediately just take all of his work. So
Yeah. Now, one name that I'm watching, hoping his ADP falls as people start getting hyped up on guys like Josh Downs. I think Alec Pierce could be a full-time guy if Josh Downs is a slot monster. We like him in Dynasty, but he mostly plays slot. Alec Pierce could be the full-time wide receiver opposite Michael Pittman. So I don't think that pick is crazy here. Are you doing Rashi Rice at all, John, for Kansas City?
I mean, dart throws. You never know, right? Patrick Mahomes throws to everybody. Right? That wasn't that the whole thing on him. So if he ends up popping, then sure, maybe.
Rashi Rice or Juju?
Juju, because I think there's definitely more path to targets there.
Yeah, but we're taking him over Myers. We're taking him over Tyler Boyd.
Yeah, basically, I'm not drafting a single Raider except for
nobody.
Maybe Mayer.
Oh, Josh Jacobs.
Yeah, Josh Jacobs, and maybe the tight end, right? Like just kind of throw a dart throw.
I guess we'll talk about that.
Because Garoppolo will probably have to throw a tight end. What are you doing lately? So Chase Claypool's way down here, right? Yeah. I mean,
I don't mind it. I'm one of the Chase Claypool apologists. Right? If you look at the game log, Chase Claypool was hurt. He came in, started slow because he had to learn the playbook. Then he got hurt. Then Justin Fields got hurt. They played one game where both of them played more than 60% of the snaps. Claypool got hurt in that game, but he got like 6 targets and looked pretty good, man.
This could be a spot where you talk about rebuilds and guys that get phased out. Like this could be a Darnell Mooney phase out, right? Like where DJ Moore's in and Chase Claypool they traded for and has a much better profile, and pedigree. Like this could be a spot where Claypool steps forward. So I kind of like taking darts on Claypool. What are you doing with John Mechie here? Supposedly back.
I love the idea. I love the idea that he's playing with his quarterback, right? Like he's playing with his college quarterback now. I mean, it's like, or no, sorry, they got Bryce. They didn't get Bryce Young. They got Stroud.
Like still,
that would have been a great idea.
This is a guy who was highly touted, and then obviously the unfortunate cancer thing that he had to deal with, but fully recovered, supposedly ready to go.
I'm in. So that's the exact situation I was talking about earlier with the Cardinals. Let's take dart throws. If it's an uncertain situation, I'll toss a dart. Absolutely. So yeah, give me guys like that. Give me Wan'Dale Robinson, right? With we don't know what's going to go down with that Giants group. I know we only have a couple minutes here, but going through here, man, I'll take a stab again. Wan'Dale Robinson, Paris Campbell. We don't know which one of those guys is going to get that role.
Cedric Tillman down there. I've been taking some darts on Cedric Tillman in that offense for the Browns. You don't know like what's going to fill in that spot. Donovan Peoples-Jones is there. Elijah Moore is there, but they did draft Cedric Tillman, so maybe that he's the guy. Kevin there, Tyquan Thornton, woefully undervalued. Yeah, listen, right. I'm willing to give a buy to Mac Jones last year. We've had some questions in our Dynasty chat in the Discord there about what to do with Mac Jones. They're getting trade offers for him. Bill O'Brien's here. Bill O'Brien's going to install an NFL-style offense. It's not going to be a mixture of Matt Patricia and Joe Judge. It's a Bill O'Brien NFL offense. This is Mac Jones' opportunity to prove that he can build upon a rookie here. Mac Jones looked good as a rookie. Last year was horrible. Get a real offensive coordinator. Get a real offensive system there. Tyquan Thornton, we know, has speed to burn. If he plays up in this offense this year, then yeah, he's worth a dart throw deep leagues here for best ball because that's what he's probably best for format. So.
And the ADP for all those guys we just mentioned is after 210 or so, which that means you can have them for free. Like that's, it's an 18-round draft. And I think 18 rounds takes us to like 216. Yeah. So, with Devontae Parker going 214 off the board, there you go. You can have them for free. And if you want to draft with us right now, we're doing best ball drafts with Fantasy Alarm members. Go to Underdog, get signed up, use promo code Fantasy Alarm. Whether you want to draft with us or not, they'll match up to $100, 100% of whatever you put in there. The puppy's going right now. Best Ball Mania is open, all big tournaments, and we're doing our own drafts with our analysts, me, John, Britt Flynn, Kevin Tompkins, Colby Conway. Obviously, the great Howard Bender is going to be in there. Justin Fensterman. They've all signed up for him. You draft with us. We've got one going already. We're talking a bunch of trash, having a ton of fun. So yeah, pop in over on the Discord channel. We have a couple promos going right now, John. One NFL draft still active, right? That's a 20% off for the entire year.
Maybe that may have been only during the NFL draft. I'm not 100% certain on that one, but we do have the NFL 50 promo. Now the scroll below says MLB 50. NFL 50 works. Coop works. You can do it all. It's 50% off the first 6 months. $19.98 a month for the first 6 months. You go to facealarm.com, all pro promo code NFL 50. Coop, MLB 50, whatever you want. You get access to everything we have on site, not just MLB, NFL content there, but NHL, NBA, NASCAR, PGA, MMA. It's all that for the first 6 months. It's just about $20 a month. And right now we have a 7-day free trial included. So you can go sign up, get the 7-day free trial, You'll love it. You won't want to leave. I'm not even worried about it. You can get in our premium Discord. It's going to be great. But if for whatever reason you don't like it, you can cancel, no charge, 7-day free trial. So that's what we got going on here at Fantasy Alarm. And again, download the free Better Sports Network app too. It's in your iTunes. It's in your Google Play Store. We're thrilled to be part of the Better Sports Network team here. Coop, we're going to be back next week talking best ball running back tiers. Should be fun for everybody. We'll be back on Wednesday. We'll talk to you all later.